This is not Pikachu. This is a Pikachu clone. Pikachu is the mascot of the Pokemon franchise and one of the world's most recognizable icons. So making new Pokemon that very closely resemble Pikachu is a smart business strategy. For this reason, most generations of Pokemon will have their own Pikachu clone, a small electric-type rodent that usually exists to sell cute merchandise. But are any of these Pikachu clones worthwhile competitively? For the most part, Pikachu clones have very low stats and little in the way of desirable traits for competitive teams. But some of them do manage to find uses for themselves in niche circumstances. In fact, there was a certain very famous example of this that has had a permanent impact on competitive Pokemon discourse. Whether or not Muck counts as a Pikachu clone is still currently a matter of debate. So why don't we go ahead and rank every single one of these Pikachu clones and figure out which one is the best competitively. For this list, I will not be counting Marill or Azumarill, even though some people do. Marill does resemble Pikachu, but Azumarill is the one I would be ranking, who I don't think resembles Pikachu as much. I will also be counting Pikachu himself and Raichu in this. Raichu is not a Pikachu clone. They are directly related, but I'd like to talk about him anyway. Mimikyu also counts in my eyes. It's not electric type, but it is literally a Pokemon who exists to resemble Pikachu, so I think that's a Pikachu clone. Feel free to share your detailed thoughts about what is or is not a Pikachu clone in the comments. I will be sure to read every word. Subscribe to the channel within 5 seconds, or else the Pikachu clone Dedenne will be dropped into an active volcano. Thank you. At the very bottom of the list, the worst Pikachu clone in the game would have to be Minun. It's regrettable, I hate to say it, but Minun is horrendous. Of all the Pikachu clones, this one at a Plusle definitely resemble Pikachu the most. I think as a child I was a little bit confused when I saw these, thinking they were some sort of alternate form of Pikachu. I quite like the design of Minun and Plusle, both visually and in gameplay concept. They existed in Gen 3 as a showcase of the new double battles mechanic. Minun has the ability Minus, which grants bonus special attack to Plusle, and Plusle has the ability Plus, which does the same to Minun. This is a cool way to teach the concept of doubles mechanics and supporting allies to new players. But in doubles, this is obviously not a very good strategy. These two are slow, they have terrible stats, and in singles, they basically have no ability at all and are outclassed by just about every other electric type in the world. Plusle is slightly better because it has a higher special attack stat. Having higher defense doesn't really matter when your stats are this low. The Plusle hits a bit harder than Minun, but the difference is negligible. Plusle is a pretty good Pokemon in Gen 3 NU, which is one of the lower tiers, because it has access to useful moves like Encore and Baton Pass for pivoting, but that would be the peak of its power. And Plusle and Minun have never really achieved much in competitive. I don't think they were designed to, so that's okay. That's not their purpose. But it's the truth regardless. Up next is Dedenne. This Pokemon has really hit a dead end when it comes to its own viability, hasn't it? This is an electric fairy typing, which is a good typing actually. Fairy offers dragon immunity and useful resistances. And visually I love the design. It is very cute. It has the Cheek Pouch ability because it is a hamster. Cheek Pouch allows this Pokemon to restore 1/3 of its HP if it eats a berry, which is pretty cool. You can use Recycle to repeatedly consume berries and get that healing from Cheek Pouch. And Dedenne also has access to Grass Knot, allowing it to hit ground types, which is important for electric types to do, but it just has bad stats. What can be said? In its debut game of Generation 6, Dedenne is ranked in the ZU tier, which is as low as you can possibly get. And in Gen 9 ZU, Dedenne is completely unviable in the lowest power level format of the entire game. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Dedenne has little to offer for competitive gamers. Up next is Emolga, the Gen 5 Pikachu clone, who is a flying type. It's a flying Pikachu. This Pokemon has the abilities Motor Drive and Static, which are both good. Static can inflict paralysis on enemies that make contact with a 30% chance to do so, and Motor Drive offers electric immunity and boosts your speed stat if hit by an electric move. These abilities are pretty good, and electric flying is a good typing, but once again the stats are unimpressive. In Gen 5 ZU, Emolga can use Acrobatics with a flying gem to do big damage, and it has a pretty good move pool. It can use Roost to heal up, it has U-turn and Volt Switch for pivoting, Encore and Taunt for utility, even Knockoff for item removal, making it an effective all-purpose offensive pivot. But Gen 5 ZU is hardly the peak of Pokemon power. This is overall not a good competitive Pokemon. Up next is Morpeko, and this might be a controversial statement, but this is my least favorite of the Pikachu clones. I feel like it's very cylindrical. I don't like its shape. and I'm not a fan of the fact that the alternate form is called the hangry form. It feels like a forced attempt at appealing to internet humor or something. It doesn't sit right with me. Anyway, Morpeko has an interesting mechanic with the ability Hunger Switch. At the end of each turn, it changes forms from full belly mode into hangry mode and vice versa. And this affects its attack Aura Wheel. Aura Wheel has an impressive 110 base power, and it changes type depending on the form. In full belly form, it's an electric type attack, but in hangry form, it is a dark type attack. The forms themselves have identical stats. All that changes is the type of the move Aura Wheel. This is a pretty interesting idea, and off the back of the impressive base power of this attack, access to Seed Bomb, which allows you to hit ground types, and Parting Shot, which is a good pivoting move, Choice Band Morpeko is a viable set in Gen 8 ZU. So competitively, this has a bit more going for it than the previous Pikachus, but cosmically, I don't think this is a very good Pikachu. Up next is Togedemaru, an electric steel type Pikachu clone. I like this one, it's extremely spherical, and competitively it has more to offer than the previous Pikachus for a few reasons. This guy has some good abilities: Iron Barbs, punishes enemies for making physical contact, Lightning Rod, offers electric immunity and a special attack boost if hit by an electric move, and Sturdy is effectively like a Focus Sash, allowing you to survive on 1 HP if one hit KO'd from full. Togedemaru is viable in Gen 7 NU, which doesn't sound great, but so far we're talking about ZU and PU. Gen 7 NU is a pretty high power level for these little Pikachus, so let's give Togedemaru some respect. Togedemaru has Zing Zap, an electric type physical move with a 30% flinch chance. Many electric types wish they had such a good physical move. You also have Iron Head for the same effect, but being a steel type attack. U-turn for pivoting. Nuzzle, which is a great way to inflict paralysis. It has a 100% paralysis chance. And on top of all this, Togedemaru has some viability in higher tiers because of its Fear set. Fear is a gimmick strategy in Pokemon where you choose to be level 1 on purpose to abuse certain game mechanics. Togedemaru has a good combination of traits to abuse a level 1 set. First of all, it's immune to Sandstorm thanks to its steel typing. It has Sturdy, allowing it to survive any incoming hit, and it has access to Endeavor, a move that sets your opponent to the same health value that you have. Shell Bell is an item that heals you based on a percentage of the damage you have dealt. Because Endeavor deals so much damage, Togedemaru can abuse this by getting hit down to 1 HP, living thanks to Sturdy, using Endeavor and healing all the way back, allowing it to survive another incoming hit and do it all over again. If Sandstorm is up, set by an ally, the enemy Pokemon will faint if they're not immune to Sandstorm. Togedemaru also has access to Spiky Shield, a protection move that deals residual damage to the enemy if they make contact. This is another way to deal that last little bit of damage to KO them after your Endeavor. What's also nice about Togedemaru is that it gets Fake Out. If you come in on Stealth Rock, your Sturdy will be broken, but Togedemaru can Fake Out to heal itself back up to full HP and be able to abuse Sturdy once again, making this a little bit more consistent than some other Fear strategies. This is a gimmick, but it can actually get surprising value, and I've even seen it in Gen 7 Ubers back in the day. There was someone who used to ladder with this and get pretty good value out of it. Up next is the original Pikachu. It turns out that Pikachu himself is not the best of the Pikachus, but he's a fairly respectable Pikachu. This Pokemon has access to the exclusive item Light Ball, which grants double attack and special attack. Only Pikachu is able to use this item, and this does give Pikachu a bit of value in the old gen lower tiers. In Generation 2, Pikachu is ranked in underused. Pretty impressive, alongside these other electric rodents, to be honest. In Gen 3, Pikachu has occasionally been used by pro players, mostly as a funny joke, but he was still used nonetheless, and I consider that respectable. And in the Gen 3 NU tier, Pikachu is an excellent choice. In most generations though, even with the Light Ball, Pikachu is just not very good and tends to be ranked all the way down at the bottom in ZU. But I think that its early success in the old gens is worth praising, and I would give Pikachu some respect for that. Up next is Pachirisu, a squirrel-based twist on Pikachu, and a famous Pokemon, perhaps the most famous competitive Pokemon on this list. One of the most iconic moments in competitive Pokemon history was the Pachirisu win at the 2014 Pokemon World Championships. Pachirisu's placement here is pretty much entirely off the back of that enormous win. Pachirisu was used on this team for its ability Volt Absorb, which grants electric immunity, and the move Follow Me, which is really useful in doubles. Follow Me, when used, will redirect single target attacks from the opposing side side to the user, shielding your ally. Sejun Park was using Gyarados and Talonflame, who both appreciate this redirection, shielding them from electric type attacks. Pachirisu also has access to Nuzzle, which can inflict paralysis and bypass Taunt since it's an attack. And Super Fang was also used, dealing 50% in damage of the Pokemon's remaining health, allowing follow-up KOs from teammates. This particular set of traits happened to be a perfect fit on this team from Sejun Park, in the particular metagame he was playing in. This was, however, an extremely niche use case for Pachirisu that doesn't often come up in VGC. And outside of this one big accomplishment, Pachirisu is pretty underwhelming in every other context. In competitive singles, it is pretty useless, even being outclassed by many of these other electric rodents. This was an incredibly creative niche Pokemon choice that deserves all the praise it gets. But this is a moment that is often misinterpreted. You cannot brute force any Pokemon into competitive viability through the power of friendship. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Pokemon need to serve some sort of purpose to be competitively viable, and Pachirisu did in this one instance. Up next, we've got Alolan Raichu. I almost forgot about this one, but it does exist. This guy has a pretty fun design. He's surfing on his own tail, and it has an electric psychic type combination. Alolan Raichu has the ability Surge Surfer, which grants double speed in electric terrain. When Gen 7 first came out, I thought this sounded excellent and might be OU viable, but in practice, it's not a fantastic concept in singles. The electric terrain setter of choice is Tapu Koko, who kinda does the job that Alolan Raichu would do anyway. Putting Alolan Raichu and Tapu Koko on your team might be too much overlap. And in lower tiers, there are no great electric terrain setters, and electric psychic typing on its own merits isn't fantastic from Gen 7 onwards. Alolan Raichu is vulnerable to dark type attacks, and it doesn't even have the electric immunity that base form Raichu does. This Pokemon has some value in doubles, as alongside a Tapu Koko teammate, you're able to outrun the majority of the metagame, and you have a good move pool for doubles too, with options like Fake Out and Encore. Up next is Pawmot. This is one that many seem to classify as a Pikachu clone, but I gotta say, he doesn't resemble Pikachu quite as much as some of these other ones. He is much taller, he is not as rodent-like, but he does have an electric typing and big ears. Pawmot is an interesting Pokemon. It is an electric fighting type. It actually has pretty good offensive stats with 115 attack and a respectable 105 speed. It has the good ability Volt Absorb for that electric immunity, and also Iron Fist for a more offensive ability, boosting punch-based moves. And what's really interesting about Pawmot is its access to the move Revival Blessing. Pawmot and Rabska are the only two Pokemon with this move, and this is a move that acts like the revive item from the Pokemon games. This will revive a fainted ally and bring them to 50% HP. Revival Blessing only has a single PP, meaning it can only be used once per game, unless you're holding a Leper Berry. Many people thought that Pawmot would be really broken with access to this move. Revival was not a mechanic present in Pokemon games in the past. Many were afraid that this would be game-breaking, but it turned out to actually not be fantastic. Pawmot itself has poor defensive stats, is a little bit hard to make use of, and restoring a Pokemon to 50% HP once per game is not actually as impactful as it sounds. Early on in the Gen 9 metagame, Pawmot saw UU viability thanks to its good offensive traits, access to close combat, and the move Double Shock, which is a 120 power physical electric type attack that when used, removes your electric typing. Pawmot also gets Mach Punch, Knock Off, Ice Punch, and Volt Switch, an impressive offensive move pool. And a Revival Blessing can be useful to revive allies that can still function at 50%, like Choice Scarf threats or wall breakers with priority moves. Pawmot is currently ranked PU in Gen 9, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I think the Pokemon does have potential at higher tiers, and it did see some use in OU and UU in the past, so I would give it some respect for that. Up next is Raichu, the evolved form of Pikachu. Many are furious at me right now for including Raichu on this list. Jimothy, this is not a Pikachu clone, this is Pikachu's direct descendant. This is Pikachu himself, born again. And to that I say, alright, fair enough. But who talks about Raichu? Nobody talks about this Pokemon. Pikachu steals all the spotlight. Let's talk about Raichu for once, why don't we? Raichu started off strong with an underused ranking in its debut game, and it's pretty decent in the early generations all around, with a strong move pool, with options like Encore to earn free turns, Focus Punch for mixed coverage, the ability Static, which can inflict paralysis, and from Gen 5 onwards, Raichu would get the ability Lightning Rod, which grants electric immunity immunity and raises the Pokemon's special attack when hit by an electric move. What's really cool about Raichu though is its utility in doubles. This is actually a pretty damn consistent Pokemon in competitive doubles throughout the years that often comes up to solve problems. Lightning Rod has the added benefit in doubles of redirection. If the enemy uses an electric type move, it will naturally be redirected to Raichu. It pulls in the electric moves and is immune to them. This is fantastic alongside allies like Gyarados or sometimes even Kyogre in formats where Kyogre is legal. Anything weak to electric appreciates this inherent redirection that doesn't even require a move usage to be active. Raichu also has a great move pool for a utility doubles Pokemon, Fake Out being chief among his options. Fake Out is a fantastic move in doubles that has priority on it and flinches an opposing Pokemon 100% of the time. This is a fantastic way to disrupt something on the enemy's side, allowing your ally a free turn to set up or get an attack in the books or something. Encore is also very useful to punish disadvantageous moves being clicked. Volt Switch is a great way to pivot. Feint is a good support move in doubles that can bypass protection, allow your ally to hit through an enemy trying to protect an incoming attack. And then of course you have Nuzzle, which has a 100% chance to inflict paralysis and is not affected by taunt since it's an attack. This Raichu probably sounds like a pretty similar concept to the Pachirisu. The Pachirisu was used because of its access to Follow Me, which can redirect more attacks than just electric type attacks, but overall Raichu sees more use in doubles. For this reason, I would give Raichu a lot of respect for its competitive viability on this list. And at the very top of the list is Mimikyu. Not only do I think this is the best of the bunch competitively, it is also my favorite in terms of visual design and flavor. In fact, Mimikyu is one of my favorite modern Pokemon designs. I think it's a fantastic concept all around, and its competitive success is pretty impressive. Despite underwhelming stats, Mimikyu makes up for that with a fantastic Ghost Fairy typing and the extremely good ability Disguise. Disguise pretty much acts like a passive substitute. By disguising as Pikachu, Mimikyu shields itself from an incoming hit once, allowing it a free turn of setup, either to get a hit in there like Play Rough or Shadow Claw, or to boost up with Swords Dance. In Gen 7, Mimikyu was occasionally used on hyper offense teams, as its access to priority, pretty good stab options, and that free turn of setup fits with a hyper offense game plan. A recent team I covered on the channel featuring Sudowoodo also featured a Mimikyu, utilizing a similar strategy. Not only does Mimikyu possess singles viability, it is also a good Pokemon in doubles for its access to Trick Room. Trick Room is an effect that inverts the speed stat for 5 turns, meaning slower Pokemon will move first instead of faster Pokemon temporarily. This is a great mechanic in doubles where you have an ally to abuse Trick Room immediately, and games tend to go shorter in the VGC rule set since you can only bring 4 Pokemon to a game. Abusing slow, bulky, and threatening Pokemon alongside Trick Room is a tried and true strategy in doubles, and Mimikyu is a pretty good Trick Room setter because of that disguise, offering a pretty consistent way to do so. Shout out to Mimikyu for being the most powerful Pikachu in history. So there you have it, folks, an objective ranking of every single Pikachu ever made. Who is your favorite of these Pikachus? Mine is Mimikyu, and what would you like me to talk about next? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.